Welcome back to MVM. Today we're going to do a Kickstarter preview for Awaken Realms' brand new game called Etherfields. It is a 1-to-4 player cooperative / adventure / exploration / what they're calling a dream crawler game. Because what you're doing in it is you're representing different characters that are entering the dreams of these so-called entities. And what these entities are, you'll discover through the course of the game. They don't give you a whole lot of direction on what you're trying to do, but you are trying to survive. That's the key here. All right, so this is a scenario-based game, and they're saying in the base game it's going to have around 30 different scenarios, and each of these scenarios is about 45 to 60 minutes or longer, depending upon the scenario that you're playing. It's going to have a campaign that will consist of all those different scenarios built into one large game, and this is going to be 60 to 70 hours in total. It's also going to have a ton of different components. You're seeing miniatures off to the side. Obviously, everything that you see here are just prototype. However, with any of the Awaken Realms things that we ever receive, prototypes pretty close to being done, especially for the art and the look of the game. It's a beautiful looking game. You have cards, you have miniatures, you have masks, you have a lot of envelopes that are going to be opened up and revealed. But in its heart, it is a deck building game because you're going to be building out this deck of cards that represents you as a character.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some of these components because you're going to see a lot spread out here that probably don't understand quite yet. But at the beginning of the game, each player is going to choose a character, and you're going to get a character board of your color. You're also going to get a miniature of your color and a specific deck. So like Jeremy said, it's a deck builder, but everybody gets a specific deck to start with that meets their specialist. We have 3 right here for the prologue that we played. There will be more to play, and there may even be more that come out during the course of the campaign, like Jeremy mentioned. You're also going to have a ton of different decks. You're going to have decks for your item cards, your advantages, your fate deck, your action cards, your items. All these are going to be spread out in specific spaces on this board, so it has a spot to hold every particular type of card. In addition, you're going to see off to the side 2 decks of secret cards. And this is kind of the meat of the game. You're going to be discovering these secrets as you play through, and these cards are going to cover a wide variety of different things that are going to happen during that campaign mode. Some of those tiles are going to sit off to the side here and form your world map, while other tiles are going to sit out here on this grid here and form your scenario map. Because during the game, you're going to be moving your pawn around this world map and triggering encounters and scenarios that are going to be played over here. And these cards are going to be played out in very specific order. For example, this card says turn 1, so you would start turn 1 with this card flipped. And then to discover the rest of these cards, you have to do specific things by moving around these cards. In addition, every player is going to be given 2 masks at the beginning of the game, and each one of these masks has abilities printed on the back. But you, as a player, don't get to look at the backs of these cards. All you're judging from when choosing these masks is what the artwork looks like and if you think it fits the style of play that you would like. Then you get to look at your ability and see if it's going to be something that actually helps your character or not. So that just adds to the whole mystery of this game.
So to play the game, what you're actually doing is you're using your deck to interact with the different scenarios. Now, we've played through 2 of the 30 possible scenarios, starting with what they call the prologue. And we're going to reveal some of that to you right now. Now, notice this is going to be spoilery. So if you don't want to have any context at all of what's going on in the game, turn away. However, it's not going to spoil too much. There's going to be 30 different scenarios. You're going to experience this the very first time that you play the game.
Everyone is going to play that prologue, and everyone is going to start on this exact same starting tile here.
All right, so to start off, you're going to start off in a ditched car. You've ran your car off to the side of the road, and you're in the woods, and that means that you're going to take a stack of cards that Ryan already alluded to that is done in this prologue card. This prologue card is going to tell you the cards to pull from this deck, and it's going to tell you basically how to set it up. And the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to put card 15 down. These other cards won't be on the board. We're leaving them here to show you basically how they would set up during the game. The front side is going to show you like a blurred out picture, but it's basically showing you sitting in that car. And when you turn it over, each one of these cards is broken into 4 different regions. So you have basically an X that goes through the middle of it with 4 regions. These are areas where you're going to move your character around, which is represented by one of these miniatures, taking actions in these areas. As you start to explore more areas within that surrounding, in this case, the inside of the car and then maybe the woods areas, you're going to start moving to different locations that make up that panorama. This is how you get kind of like that unlock feel, that discovery, that escape room feel in the game. And one of the cool things about this is they've thrown in a lot of flavor text into the game as well. Things that really don't have any gameplay meaning, but they have some cool story-based things and like that scary haunted feeling. Now, all of these different scenarios are going to have different types of writings depending upon the way you're playing the game, what you're trying to find out, who's haunting the entity, what the story may be, and so forth. So it's a really cool aspect that you're going to be doing. And again, these cards are going to have different things you have to do at different times in the game with the cards that you have.
So the cards that you get in the game from your own personal deck are going to consist of different types of cards. They're going to be cards that you can then play below. You can have 5 active cards during the game, and they're going to have abilities on them that you get to use. Then you're going to get these basic ones that are just the different icons that you can use for the different things. And those icons represent what, Ryan?
There's 3 different kinds of skills in the game. You have your wrath, your communication, and your adaptation. And they're color-coded green, red, and yellow. And you're going to pay for these through different resources, but you're going to see these colors come up a lot during the game.
And so each of these colors are going to represent different things you'll be able to do. And on the board, it's going to say you're going to need 6 yellow, for instance, or 4 green. And in that case, you can spend the amount of icons you have on the card in order to take that action, or some of the base actions like move, you'll be able to use to move. Now, you can't split them up, but you can use them to help the players in your same space. So if I need to help Ryan move and we're in the same location, I can say here's 2 yellow to help you move 2 spaces. Or maybe he needs green to help him accomplish that task. And so you're going to be using the cards in those 2 different ways, either as the resource you need to accomplish the action, or instead to put down here as an ability to use throughout the game.
So one of the cool things about the cards that can be played below your player board is that you can have 5 of them at any given time. Typically, all of these cards allow you to use them in special ways to kind of manipulate the game state at different times. One of the cool aspects, too, is that they can also be spent from below your player board to help with those actions. So if there's this card here that's green, that has 2 of the green icons, if I'm not using this card, I don't find a particular use for it in the scenario, and it's sitting down here, I can use those green icons to help Ryan or help myself to do something in the game, and just turn it back to my discard pile.
And so with that, you can use the cards to take as many actions as you can or as necessary to complete the tasks based on what you have left in your hand. After that, you're done. So there's no real set amount of actions per round.
Yeah, and everyone's going to get a special action as well. On the back of each one of these cards, you'll see a printed ability that is unique to your character role. Now, as you get other cards, as you level up and build this deck, you're going to be weeding out some of these, so you're going to see your ability less often. But as long as your card is one of your cards is at the top of your deck, you're going to be able to use that special ability.
And speaking of the actions, this massive deck right here are all the potential actions you could gain and add to your deck throughout the game and really build up your abilities throughout.
So as we said, we wanted to give you a basic idea of how the game plays. I'm going to walk you through a turn, or my turn in this case. I've drawn 5 cards, and I want to use these cards to take actions on the board. Now, as we said, everyone's going to start in this particular location, and I am the green player, so I'm going to start down in the start location. Each of these colors does something according to the color itself. Yellow is used for movement, red is used for fighting, and green is used for communicating with various aspects within the game. So if I want to move out of the space and I have a 2 yellow, I can move 2 spaces. I could go 1, 2, or I can move off into an adjacent location as long as I've acquired those locations from the game state itself. So in this case, if I want to discover 15A, which has not been discovered yet, I can move up here for one of those yellow actions. And again, if I had just a 1 yellow, which I do, that saves me that other card that I may want to use later. So I go simply to my discard pile, and then I am allowed to spend 4 green to find this 15A card. And there's a bunch of text here that's going to walk you through the actual story of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to find here. And if I had those 4 green, I could actually just expend them to my discard and then discover this card. And each of these different scenarios is trying to push you along a path to discover what's going on. In this first scenario, as we said, we've ditched our car off to the side of the road. We're trying to find the keys to it. We're not really sure what's going on. There's this creepy voice that's coming off into the woods. Do we go find it? We did, and we found some awful monster along the way that we had to fight. Each of these is going to introduce different gameplay mechanisms, and that's one of the cool things about this game is that it does have kind of an unlock feel to it as well. There are things hidden in the cards. There are cards you're going to discover in this secret stack These secret stack include a wide variety of different things, including cards like this, that can overlay other cards in unique ways and introduce new gameplay elements. In fact, there's cards in the game that are going to introduce new envelopes. In this case, we found this envelope here, 77, that introduced tokens. And we're not going to say what these tokens do, but they add a completely new gameplay element. And as we talk to Awaken Realms, there's a lot of these different things that are going to be in the game. They're going to introduce new elements as you get further into the game, which kind of allows some variety in the things that you're doing within the game.
Yeah, and not everything is going to be as easy to find as just moving to a tile and doing an action, because like we said, there is a huge escape room element to this. So this is the prologue. It's kind of guiding you into this experience, but later scenarios are going to be puzzles to solve. You're going to have movement obstacles, and you have to trigger things in specific orders. And a lot of these are actually going to have enemies on the board trying to stop you from solving the puzzle while you're trying to solve it.
And it's very unique too, is that your deck, you're going to get very accustomed to the cards in your deck, but as Kira had previously mentioned, there's a lot of these different action cards that you're going to get through the course of the game. All these action cards look very different than your basic resource cards. All of these have those special abilities at the bottom. So you can start to tailor your deck to do very specific things. If you want to be very good at fighting, you go after the red cards and you start cycling those through your deck. And if you want to be the communicator of the group and just talk your way out of different things, you can go after those particular cards. There's a variety of items that you're going to be able to use and grab and find through the game that are obviously going to give the team as a whole very unique aspects and things to do. In fact, there's even cards in the game that when you find them, they're going to lead you on like side quests. Like for example, I'm the specialist, which is a green character. I have this card in my deck called Pocket Ladder, and it has no use other than contributing 3 green icons during the game. However, once we find a city scenario, I can take this ladder underground and find tile 338. We have no idea what tile 338 is. It could be a completely different side quest. Yeah, and it has nothing to do with that base scenario. It's just a different thing completely. In fact, in one of the scenarios we found a pool of water. And we could dive into the pool of water, which is something completely different. So it may set up a different scenario, something else that has nothing linked with that particular scenario. So there's a lot of these like ancillary things that you're going to find along the way to be able to do.
Well, in order to get the action cards too, you have to spend ether, which is a pretty big part of the game, obviously, since it's in the game name. But it is a very limited resource, and it's difficult to get, and you can lose it just as easily. Ryan, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so ether is, like you said, it's a currency, and there are a few different kind of currencies in the game, but the ether is the most important because it's going to be the one that gets you, like you said, not only new cards, but also certain entities that you discover on the map are going to ask for ether, or you're going to have to turn ether in as a penalty to avoid a worse fate. But yeah, you're basically going to earn that as XP from combat or talking your way out of situations. Like Jeremy said, there is that communication skill. In some dungeon crawl type games, communication is kind of almost like a throwaway. But in this game, a lot of the entities we've faced so far, you've been able to talk to instead of just fighting your way out of them, which I think is something really unique for this style of game.
So we've talked about the infusion of new game elements in each of the scenarios. We've talked about the co-op aspect, where you're always helping other people to move along. The last thing I want to talk about is the world map. Talk about how it builds into the scenarios and what you're doing back and forth between the two.
This world map is pretty cool because we have a world map that we've played in, that came to us kind of in progress. But normally, you're only going to have one tile to start with or a few tiles to start with, and you're going to be building this world map as you discover new places. For example, after we completed that prologue, we were given 2 optional missions. One to come over to the swamp and one to come over to the underground. And we had to decide which of these areas we wanted to get to and in order to progress the story. And it could have gone in 2 completely different branching ways. We decided to go to the underground, which meant we had to take turns to move there. And you're going to see a bunch of icons on this path. Some of these icons are going to trigger random encounters from the encounter deck, which could be fights. You're going to have a little random encounter tiles that you put out just like a scenario. They could be people to interact with. They could just be bad things that happen to you. They could, like you had mentioned, trigger completely different side quests that don't actually progress the story forward, but that do give you more background information about the world. Because one thing they've done here is been very secretive about what's actually going on. We've found some clues that are starting to give us maybe a slight taste of what is actually happening in this game, but we have no idea. You're going to have to find lore by doing a lot of these side quests. And not only that, but doing side quests is going to increase, like help you build your deck and get better cards, get more ether, and things like that. So you don't want to avoid that. But you're also going to see a lot of icons on this map that aren't explained. Things that we don't even know what they do yet. You have to find other cards in order to activate some of these spaces.
It's got a nice sandbox element to it for sure.
Yeah, and when you get to the proper area, for example, you'll see these areas marked with a blue key. When you get there, that's when you get to actually trigger the next scenario.
Right.
So one thing we didn't talk about were the encounters. So when you end up in an encounter, you're going to flip this over, and there's going to be a number of different things on the card. The most important thing is going to be what the different abilities are for the character that you're encountering against your turn counter deck, which is going to show potentially a little die-looking number over here, which will correspond to the actions that they will take based on what's showing.
Yeah, each one of these encounters is going to be played over, we talked about this, a certain number of turns, but the way you track those turns is by setting up a turn counter deck. When you're looking at that top card of the turn counter deck and seeing that symbol, you get to know in advance what the enemy is going to do at the end of the round. In this case, the enemy is going to do their number 1 move. Whenever you fight an encounter, you actually get a mini that's going to come out on the map and move around this map and interact with the different players. And each one is going to have a target that you're going to have to either deal damage or, like I said, communicate with in order to defeat them. In addition, they're going to have rewards, they're going to have special abilities, and then they're going to have their moves that they do every turn. So you do get a turn to prepare for that move coming into place because you're going to get to know what it's going to do before it does it. Now, not all of these minions always have to be defeated. They can be talked to. Some can just be run away from. Yeah. If you complete a scenario, even when there's a random encounter happening, you're going to still complete that scenario either way.
And remember, not all of these encounters are bad. You're going to meet merchants. You're going to meet people that are going to help you through. Obviously, the random encounters are an inflection of something that's outside of the scenario, but a lot of the scenarios themselves are going to have encounters. Typically monsters or bosses you'll fight, but you'll have a number of different people, NPC characters, that you'll meet along the way as well. The final thing I want to talk about real briefly is the actual deck building. We kind of glazed over it. You're going to be introducing a lot of cards into your deck, and these cards are actually going to follow you through the entire campaign. So this isn't a game where you're going to build a deck, and then when you're done with it, you're going to reset. In fact, you're going to play through the entire 60 to 70 hour campaign with a deck that constantly evolves and gets better, introducing new cards from the secret deck, adding new cards from the action deck. All these different things are going to build into this cool deck that is just unique to you as a player.
Yeah, not to mention the suffering cards that can come out and
which are, we're not going to talk, those are the bad cards.
Stuck into your deck as well.
Yeah, those are the bad cards.
We want to talk about the bad stuff.
Yeah. So guys, that is Etherfields, a 1 to 4 player game. It is from Awaken Realms. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. We apologize if we spoiled anything to you. We try to stay away from that. There's a lot of good stuff hidden within this game that you're going to discover as you go through it. And make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.